Okay, so the two more steps we're going to get into to finish this off. Number one, I want to show on this picture that we started with, this side view of the flange of my angle bracket. I want to show that this is looking at the side view where the flange is sticking out opposite to where I'm looking. So this is a side view, and there's a flange that's sticking out. First of all, let me get rid of this background piece because now I'm just showing my flange. Second of all, let me pull my little index blocks out from behind there. See, I got my little index blocks there. Here's another one over there. Let's grab it. I got one up here. Let's grab them. I like to keep my index blocks around, so I'm just going to throw them down on the bottom of my drawing here for future use. I like to generally keep a couple of index blocks, in standard size like 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, because those are common sizes for materials that I use in my parts. So now I want to show that there is a flange sticking out on the opposite side of this drawing, this particular image here. Before I get into that, let's explain to the users, the person who might be using this drawing to make a part, what this thing really is. So I'm going to grab my little bit of text box up here with 2 inches in it. I'm going to Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste it, and then drag it down here. And I'm going to use it as a label to tell me that this is a side view, okay? And I'm going to make the text box a little bit bigger so that it doesn't kind of look crappy. So now I've got a side view of my flange. But I still haven't shown that there's a flange sticking out the back side of this. So let's grab a couple index blocks and stick them up in the corners. And I don't think that's quite right. So now I've got my index blocks in the corners, and now we're going to insert a line in there that's going to tell me that there is a flange sticking out the back. So I'm going to go under Shapes, Lines. I don't have a dotted line, but I want to put a dotted line. And let's start off by adding a regular line and change it to dotted. And we're going to drag a line across the top there. We're going to select the middle of that line, and let's change it into a dotted line showing that there is a flange on the back of that. First of all, I'm going to change it to a black line. We're going to increase the size to 1 point, and then we're going to go under the dash type options and change it to a heavy dashed line. Then I will delete my index blocks, or actually just drag them down out of the way so I can use them again. So now I am indicating on the drawing that on the opposite side of the view, the side view of the flange, there is a flange, a piece of aluminum sticking out there that you can't see. The last step, and a dotted line is an indicator for anybody making this part that that's the view they're looking at. They're looking at the side of this little piece of angle iron there, the flange is opposite. If I wanted to tell the user that the flange was on the side that I was working on, and I could do that, I would basically copy this entire drawing. I select it all. I do Control-C, Control-V, move it all, the whole bloody thing over here. Then we'll call this the front view to differentiate it from the back view. Okay, and then all I have to do is change this to a solid line. So I go under dash type and I turn it solid. And now this back view indicates that the flange is facing you because it's showing a solid line. If I want to even make it more obvious, I can add a separate rectangular object down here and make it a darker color. That's another way of doing that. But you don't have to do it that way. You can just show a solid line. By showing a solid line, it indicates the flange is facing you from this view. Okay, I just said earlier you don't need to reproduce the measurement, so I'm taking away my measurement. So I know that on the back view is the same as the front view. It's still 1.5 inches high. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to show where you're going to put a hole in there. Okay, so first of all, let's make a indicator block that'll help me get the hole centered in the flange. I want to center it in the flange as it's facing you. From the back view, it'll be lower. So centering in the flange, this front view, means it's going to be 3/4 of an inch down from the top, which is half of 1.5 inches, and 1 inch is down from the left. So I'm going to create an indicator block that's going to make it easier for me to center my hole. So let me just grab one of my indicator blocks. I'm going to select it. Then I'm going to use my format shape. And I can see that that current indicator block is 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. So what I'm going to do is make the height 3/4 of an inch, which is 0.75 inches. You guys should be able to do that math in your head. Hopefully you can. And then the width is going to be 1 inch. So now my little indicator block is 3/4 of an inch high by 1 inch wide. So I'm going to drag it up into this corner so that this corner of that indicator block is the center where I want my hole. So what I'm going to do is show you how to put a center line in. Now, a center line is a special kind of dash. I'm not going to recreate my line. I'm just going to copy and paste this line I already have in here. So I'll select this dotted line. I do Control-C, Control-V, and I'm going to drag this dotted line up to here. Now I've got a dotted line across the middle of where I want to drill that hole. But I'm going to change that line into a center line indicator. A center line indicator has a certain dash pattern. So I go over to my dash types and I will select the long dash dot dot, right? The long dash dot dot is a center line indicator. If you look in your book, you'll see that's what they use for their center line indicators. Now, you also could use the long dash single dot, but I believe the book recommends using long dash dot dot as your center line. But I need two. I need one showing the horizontal position and one showing the vertical position. So I'm going to select that line, do Control-C, Control-V, and then drag up this corner of the line to be on this corner, and then drag the bottom of that line to be on that corner. So now I've got a center line indicator for where I want to put that hole. Once I've got those lines in place, I don't need my indicator block anymore, so I'm going to drag that block back down out of the way. So now I've got little center line marks for where I want to put the hole. So what am I going to do? I am going to first put the measurements in for where that hole is going to be measured up. So I'm going to take my measurement indicator right here. I've got space in my drawing to stick this measurement in. So I'm going to copy this upper measurement point indicator, do Control-C, Control-V, drag it down to be equal to my center line. Then I'm going to grab one of my arrows over here, Control-C, Control-V, drag it over, and drag one end of it up to shorten it. So now it's showing that measurement from the top of your flange to the center of the hole. Then I'm going to grab this little measurement text box, Control-C, Control-V, drag it over, and change it to 3/4 of an inch, 0.75. Okay. So now I'm showing that that's 3/4 of an inch. My last step is for the other dimension, which is the horizontal measurement, is I'm going to copy and paste, so I could do Control-C, Control-V, that upper measurement tool. I'm going to make my little arrow 1 inch long, so I select the arrow. I go on the format shape, the positioning, and I change the width to 1 inch, enter. Changed my text box to 1 inch, slide it over, drag over the measurement indicator. Looks like I also dragged it down, so let's make it a little higher. Select the whole thing and drag it up into place. Whoops, it looks like my 1 inch is not going to fit above the line, so I'll drag my 1 inch down below the line. So now I'm showing that that whole center is going to be 3/4 of an inch down from the top of the flange and 1 inch over from the side of the flange. The last step and the last thing I'm going to do today is show you how to do the actual hole. You're going to go under Insert, Shapes, and you've got this oval. The oval is their best option because you can turn that into a circle. It might not be on your top menu. You might find it under your basic shape. So let's make a little oval. It doesn't matter what size it is because we're going to change it. There's my little oval. Let's go under Format Shapes and make this, we're going to call it a 1/4 inch hole, okay? Just for purposes of this demonstration. So we're going to make the height a 1/4 inch, 0.25. We're going to make the width a 1/4 inch because it's a hole, not an oval. And so now I've got a 1/4 by 1/4 circle. Now it's a hole through the flange, so I want it to show white on the back. So I'm going to go underneath the fill and line options, and I'm going to change the fill color to white, and I'm going to change the line color to black, 1 point, and now I've got my 1/4 inch hole. Then I'm going to drag it up and center it on my hole, my lines. Now I'm showing a 1/4 inch hole centered on my lines. However, I want to show the center lines crossed in the middle of that hole. So I'm going to click on one of my center lines and to do something a little bit different here. Let me go very, very slow. I'm going to right click on that center line. And you're going to see in PowerPoint, one of your options is going to be Bring to Front. All right, by right clicking and then bringing to front, I bring that line up in front of my little circle. I'm also going to right click on the horizontal or the vertical indicator, which is all the horizontal measurement indicator, and that was going to be bring to front as well. So now I've got my center lines in front of my circle. Why did I wait until after I move the circle in place? Because it's easier to get your circle centered if your lines are behind it, at least in my imagination. Now you're showing it working. There is one more step. I'm not showing the dimensions of that hole through, that drilled hole through. So I want to insert a dimension indicator of that hole, and PowerPoint has got a great tool for that. So let's go Insert, Shapes, and down here at the bottom of the list, there's something called Callouts. And what you're going to do is select a standard callout line, and you're going to click on circle, and you're going to create the callout. Now, I like to use callouts without background color and without any line. So it's basically just an arrow with a measurement in black next to it. So let's change my line color to black. Let's change my background color to white. And let's change my line type to begin with an arrow. So begin arrow type down here. So that, oops, my mistake, it needs to be an end arrow type. So end arrow type right here. So that will create a little call out box with an arrow next to it. And then all I do is I hit F2 to type in your measurement. So it'll be 0.25 whole through. Notice that I can't see anything in that text box because the font is huge and it's using a font color of white. And so you just have this terrible white letters kind of going up and down your screen here. So I'm going to go back to Home, under Font, switch it to black, and then go to a nice small font color that'll fit into my text box. In this case, I'm going to use a 10-point font, and I'm going to slightly increase my text box color to give you that measurement. And that is how you do it.